I sound wild.
You sound wild. What do you mean by that?
Okay, well, I'm using someone else's microphone at the moment.
So it's the road. Yes, it is the road.
Yeah, I'm in someone else's home in a different continent, in a different country.
Are you now? Which country?
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to Endless Appreciation Sweden.
Whoa, I did not realize you were already there. Thank you for meeting at our regularly scheduled time.
Yes, if you look out the window behind me, it's very dark. But yes, it's also...
it's the sad part about northern countries.
Night is what we are waiting for all day, so we can go out filming.
Wonderful. So what are you doing there?
I'm here filming, just making some stuff. I can't talk about all the stuff I'm making. So like that's the unfortunate secret. The stuff I can talk about. I'm making. When's this gonna come out? I guess that's
probably a week.
Probably a week. Yeah. Okay. Great. If it comes out next Friday or whatever, next Thursday, next something.
Tuesday.
I'm going to mountains, and we're going to the mountains.
We're on a very, very consistent release schedule. These come out.
We were for a while there, and then the new year happened. We took a break.
Yeah, it's been nice to have a break. I'm not going to lie, but we'll get back on our regularly scheduled stuff.
But as the year continues, we can just work ourselves to death. You know?
Okay. Yes.
No,
that's exciting. Glad you're in Sweden. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm here to make some photos, take some photos, and visit some mountains because it's Mountain Month on Glass right now in February, and the mountains in Maryland are not great. You know, they're really small. They're like kind of hills, and they're over in Appalachia, right? So it's like it's actually just West Virginia that they gave to Maryland.
Pretty much. West Virginia genuinely does have some beautiful mountains, but they're in West Virginia, so they're kind of away.
They're far. We don't own a car. So I was like, okay, if I'm already traveling for mountains, what if I traveled for different mountains? And then, an idea came about, and then it kind of snowballed. And now here I am spending 8 days in Sweden and Norway.
Awesome.
For YouTube. I got a Swedish haircut today. That's very exciting. So this is brand new. This haircut is like 2 hours old. You're the first debut.
I'm going to make sure and get this out super fast.
Immediately. The world needs to see this haircut. Like and subscribe to youtube.com/Sam Hurd Photography or whatever your username is. And while you're there, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Try Glass.
Okay, so Apple Vision Pro.
You've got one.
We don't have to talk much about it other than to say I have absolutely loved looking at panorama photos through it. They let you, or automatically, if you have a panorama photo from any era, by the way, it can be from like the first phone that they supported panoramas, they like wrap it around you. So it's super immersive. And of course the earlier phones have a bit more grain and pixelation that you can see and pick up on because they are lower resolution compared to what the Vision Pro displays. But the newer ones look amazing. And in general, even those older ones, it's so immersive and huge as it wraps around you that it just makes it amazing. It's like, I don't know. How often have you, or can you imagine anybody else that has like actually sat down and looked at their panorama photos that they've taken over the years? Like there's probably less than a handful of times I personally have.
Yeah, no, I mean, like not really. I stopped taking panoramas with my phone forever ago, but I pretty regularly take panoramas with my camera. I'm a big fan of like if I'm on a really good vista or something, I'm a big fan of just the like 3 or 4 clicks using myself as the tripod, keeping it steady.
Yeah.
And the same, I love that. But, at most we're talking like 15. I don't spend a lot of time doing nature photography. This is going to be a really weird trip for me because this is all landscape photography, like almost exclusively landscape photography. And I don't take landscape photos, right? Like landscape photography to me, is amazing. I love the photographers that do it, but it's not what makes my brain go, brrr, let's go,
Same.
right?
Yeah, same. For some reason, if there aren't at this stage, if there aren't people in the landscape photo to some capacity, it's like, yeah, it just doesn't get things churning away the way that I would like. I'm with you.
Right. Like the thing that like inspires me in my own photography that I get really excited about is like taking a broken, ugly thing and making it look gorgeous. So like taking a gorgeous thing and just showing it to you is like, yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And like but whenever someone does that to me, for me, right? Like whenever someone shows me a landscape photo that they took that they're really proud of, I'm like, holy hell, that's amazing. Right. But when I take that, I'm like, oh, I don't care. Right. Like
Yeah,
I just
I'm
don't
with you.
have the personal connection to it, as opposed to when someone else is doing it, I'm like, hell yeah. Right. There's so many amazing landscape photographers on glass, and like our categories, we have like two major categories, right? Like we have 50 categories on glass, but the two that get the most use are like the nature style ones and the street style ones. And then everything else is like below that, right? It's like, okay, you're a street photographer or you're a nature photographer, or you're in like a 5 or 10% niche of like weddings or portraiture or whatever, right? Like those are the two big things that exist on glass. And so the categories are so like skewed. If you like in the internal metrics that we use, it's like, oh, there are, multiple commas in this number next to nature or mountains or whatever. But then it's like, okay, how many are in the cat category? How many cats are there on glass? And it's like, 12.
Yeah.
Comparatively, it's like 12.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So I look at a lot of landscape photos. I comment on a lot of landscape photos. I love a lot of landscape photos. But to take a landscape photo, I could not be more bored. And so I'm really interested to see what happens when I go to some of the most beautiful landscapes in the world and stare at them.
In a way, I remember feeling this also, like the first big trip it started for me, like my whole photography journey started with landscapes. That was what I would travel with my friend Tucker and go do. That was it. No people. And I remember feeling very motivated and inspired by that, blah, blah, blah. After years of photographing couples, like I said, like I have to see people in it if I want to feel like it's a photo worth taking or that like motivates me. But my first trip, after kind of years of shooting folks, I realized this feeling. And if I forced myself to take the landscape photo anyway, and then opened it up in Lightroom later, like detached from the view right there in front of me and was on my computer that evening, or especially days or weeks later, then I was much more motivated and, just doing landscape. But I don't know, that's basically it. Like once it was detached, when it was just standing there in front of me, there was a problem, like for me to feel motivated and passionate about it. But once I was detached and all I had was the memory and the photo of just the landscape, felt much more, excited. But, I don't know, that might just be a me thing.
Part of it for me was always that I used the landscapes as the excuse to do the thing that I wasn't gonna do. Right. So like I shot a lot of landscapes when I lived in Oregon, lived in Portland for like 6 years. And we, like there were years there where I had what was called Wednesday Waterfall Club, where any of us who were able to take the day off or to not be in the office that day, we would drive out to the Columbia Gorge and we would hike to a different waterfall. Sometimes it'd be like, oh, this is a short little mile stroll up like a well-maintained path. Other times it'd be like, okay, we're hiking 20 miles into the forest through like destruction and mayhem to get to a single tiny little waterfall. But it was like, we wanted the physical activity, we wanted the things. And so I was like, yeah, I'm doing it to take photos of the waterfalls. But it's like, no, I wasn't. I was doing it because I wanted to like hang out with my friends and get stoned in the forest. Oh, okay. But it was like the nice excuse of like, I'm taking photos of the waterfalls. And it was wonderful. That was the best. But looking back on it, it's like, did I care about the waterfall photos at all? It's like, I don't know. I haven't taken a photo of a waterfall in a long time.
It was for me. I remember because the long exposure shooting through an ND filter was always something like, even today, I'm still like, This is just so cool.
Well, ND filters break my brain. I love any time I get to use an ND filter, which is crazy because I never use one in my actual work.
Right.
I don't even own one anymore. I just use the one that was built into the Fujifilm 100 V or S or T or whatever letter I was using.
Variable ND filter is like one of the best things. The only reason I own one is for all camera flash, so that I can shoot with a wide open aperture, shallow depth of field, and not be overexposed. It's super useful for that. But yeah, for motion blur, slow shutter stuff, it's gold.
Yeah,
honestly, I made videos about using an ND filter to achieve motion blur in camera like years ago, and now having blur in your photos has become a very trendy thing for like the past year. But it's the blur that's like technically awful. I don't understand. It's like the handheld motion blur that doesn't really have any like intentionality. Yes, ICM. Sure. It doesn't have like any intentionality with it. It's very technically like bad looking most of the time. It's so weird.
Well, right. I think that's one of the things that's fun about ICM photography for the photographers who are taking it is like you're panning for gold, right? Like you're taking a ton of shitty photos, but then you get one that's like
phrase
perfect.
That needs though. I'm going to add that to my workshop. Panning for gold.
I mean, that's all photography is, right? Like we're just like taking a bunch of mid photos until we get a magic photo.
True. I've always thought it was just collecting data. Ever since using, AI for calling, I'm like the more frames, the better. I'm just collecting data that the computer can sift through and surface, more accurately.
And that sentence made me so sad in my heart.
I know that's a weird way to think about it, but I really
it has been such a long time since you have hurt my soul with a sentence. That's great.
It is a good way to think of it because back. a lot of people struggle with using AI calling and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, let me see the source collection of images you're starting with, because you can think of that as a variance in data quality. Like some photographers are going to have really high quality data, collection of images, and some are going to have really low quality data. And what you feed the AI as it calls through is going to have a very different output based on the quality of the data or the capture. That's really all it is. But
you're correct.
The phrasing there is just kind of sad. I know.
I just hate that you're correct, right? Like what a sad way to think about the art that people are going to look back forever.
It's okay. Film is going to continue to make a resurgence and dominate as everybody gets so burnt out of AI content being generated. But not much more to say about it other than I'm excited to see what your landscape photos look like. And if you can intentionally take a few more than you normally would, panoramas, when you're back, you can look at them through the Vision Pro. And I think it's sort of the best way to see panoramas, aside from getting an awesome huge print made of a panorama, which enough people
have you looked at any? I should send you a GFX file to look at. Do you still have any of your GFX files? I guess you've been shooting with the Hasselblad recently, so you have like the huge ones. How do those look on a huge screen? Because like that's interesting to me, right? Having a massive.
That's a good question. I haven't looked at
version of my 100 megapixel
That's a great
photo.
Question. I will look at that today. I'm not sure.
All right, tune in next week or next month when we answer that question.
You know what's funny about the Vision Pro, by the way? I was convinced for sure that I was going to send this back. Like it was already in my brain something where I was like, I'm not going to want to keep this. I'm going to send it back. I was like looking for excuses to do it. And now after like wrapping up my initial review of it, I'm keeping it. But what's funny is like basically anybody who bought one seemed to make a review about this product, which is also hilarious and annoying and maybe not even want to bother. But almost all of those people have returned theirs now. And it's just weird that I'm like on the opposite spectrum of where I thought I was going to be.
Well, as like more products come out and as more the commodification of content and knowledge is making for like a really weird purchasing landscape and a really weird content landscape, right? Like making welcome to the YouTube wars, Sam, as you have really started just randomly out of nowhere this year deciding to reinvest into YouTube, which I love.
I'm
glad I could inspire that. You didn't want to be the only YouTube star. on the channel. I get it. On the pod. Can't let it get to Daniel's head, so I'm going to keep growing. I love it. I love that I'm saying that shit when I've got like my 500 subscribers or whatever.
You're doing great, though.
Doing
Seriously.
great. Whew. Slow and steady wins the race, you know? Slow and steady wins the race. But it's, you know, like how you make things differently. Marquez Brownlee has talked about this in interviews on why he bought that $250,000 robot, the pan robot. It's amazing. And it's like the reason that he did that is like everyone's making the same review and the same video about the same product, right? Like every tech blogger and everyone on the internet has made a Apple Vision Pro review in the last 20 days or whatever it is, 10 days. And so like what sets yours apart? And Marquez is like, well, I have a $250,000 robot that does perfect pans whenever I want it to. And I have, you know, like significantly higher production value and I'm better at this than other people. But like that little extra bit that can take it over that makes them click on Marquez's versus someone else's is like a big deal. Then there's this lower half, right? Like, because the majority of views on YouTube that exist go to the top 0.001%, right? Like Mr. Beast puts out the video and 100 million people view it. Marquez puts out a video, 200 or, you know, whatever, 20 million, 25 million people view it. The Verge puts out a video, 3 to 5 million people view it. But like what happens when 100 photographers put out an Apple Vision Pro review? It's like, who's viewing that? It's like, there's only, let's say 1 million views to go amongst the lower tier of people who are making videos. And so it's like, how do you set yourself apart and what do you talk about and how do you do it? And I'm like, well, I don't know if I do. Maybe I'm just anxious on the internet publicly, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Part of it, though, I think comes down to just doing it anyway, even if you don't know what to say. Like I remember this about before I wrote my very first camera review, which was the Fuji X100. I remember I got my start reading other photographers' reviews of lenses, camera bodies, all this. And it's like, there was already an endless stream of that. And they were mostly article based at the time, which made much more sense for photography because you can look at still images throughout the article compared to video where it's harder to kind of showcase, in my opinion, the strength of your photos. If you're a really differentiated, good photographer, like clearly better, it's really tough to make that come across in a video compared to somebody who's really good at videography. We've talked about this a lot and kind of minimizes their mediocre photography, but they make up for it with excellent editing, audio, you know, variety of camera angles, all this to make a great review. Anyway, my very first post, I was like, why am I even bothering with this? I'm not as good a photographer yet as most of the other people leaving reviews and have experience doing it. In a way, I think you have an advantage because a lot of people can relate to you if they do happen to come across your video or your review, which is going to be harder. Yes, but if they do come across it, you're probably going to be a lot more relatable because you aren't somebody who's got a decade of experience and have like these photos that are unattainable to a person starting out who's generally, I think the people that consume reviews are newer photographers, in the first 5 years of really taking photography seriously. And so in a way you have an advantage, but it's just not obvious and apparent to you in the metrics, right? Because you only have 50 views compared to somebody with 50,000. But in terms of reach over time, the more often you just buckle down and do it anyway, the more that can start to serve you. And you get these network effects of people just connecting with the fact that you are more like them than you are like Marquise Brownlee.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that is odd about this for me, right? Like I'm not doing this for me or for my photography being seen. I'm doing this to try to translate the vibe of my adorable little corner on the internet. Right. Cause like, even if glass is a smashing success, goes gangbusters and it continues to grow like it's currently growing and we continue at it for another decade and we get, millions of people on glass, it is still going to be less than 1% of Instagram's size.
Yeah.
Right. It'll be like a thriving business, but it will not be this massive, huge, it'll never be Instagram. And we don't want it to be Instagram. Being Instagram is terrible, right? Like if you've ever watched those videos of Adam Mosseri answering questions about Instagram and like what they're up to. It's like he like the dead inside from all of the things that he's balancing and holding, because like it's a mess to build a product for 1 billion people and make sure that it doesn't topple governments actively is a mess.
For sure.
Right. You know, like there have been multiple genocides that have happened just because Facebook didn't moderate things quickly enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's a literal verifiable fact. And like, that's a terrible situation to be in that we do not want.
Right.
And so it's like, how do we like grow Glass successfully? And like, so my metrics for success about what like a Glass YouTube channel can do or what a project for Glass can do is like very different than most people's. And like that misalignment for what algorithms usually want is weird. I've been living in that space a lot for the last couple of months as we've been ramping up the YouTube channel. It's like, what does success look like for here? It's like, well, it's, you know, if 10 people join Glass from a video, every video, that's a huge success, right? Like, even if the views are only at whatever 500 or 1,000 people or whatever, it doesn't matter, because like the success comes from the 10 people joining, not the 1,000 people viewing or the 1,000,000 people viewing or whatever. And so it's like, how do I measure success on these things when the measures for success right now are broken, right? Because like the measures for how you view a successful YouTube video are pretty broken, right? Like how we measure success on the internet collectively when we're publishing something is off, like radically off, right? Because like that first time that you go viral, it's like the best thing that's ever happened to you. Holy hell, this is amazing, I'm succeeding. But then you realize that it doesn't actually do much, right? Like that you don't even if you get a ton of followers from it, right? Like, which doesn't really happen anymore, but let's say it does, right? Like, let's say it's like 2016 again, and having a viral post gets you an extra 10,000 followers. It's like, how many of those people are going to give you money?
Yeah.
Like,
agreed. None. Because there's no like longevity built into that new audience. I mean, it's more or less, I would think, the same as if you, well, anyway, there's a lot to unpack there, but you're right. The fundamental like metrics really do skew things in a way that kind of work against you wanting to keep putting stuff out at the end of the day. And the point is, it's sort of the same that it's always ever been. You kind of need to just put out stuff anyway. And the more you do that, the better you get, and the faster, more efficiently you're able to do it. So it doesn't, you know, the pain points of maybe, I don't know, for some people, maybe it's like balancing the audio or syncing video takes, or, you know, whatever the various pain points are of putting your content together, also dissipate and get a little easier, so you can get more excited and focus on like the raw content. And for me, it really comes down to, you know, somebody who can afford a $250,000 robot to differentiate their videos. That's great. That's one way to do it. It makes sense. But you can also differentiate by just niching down to your specific genre. You know, being a wedding photographer, other wedding photographers want to hear how the Vision Pro can fit into their wedding photography workflow. That's going to have zero appeal to somebody who's a generic like tech consumer that just wants to hear about how it performs with watching movies or something like that. And so, you know, there's room, if you can create a unique enough perspective in your really specific use case as a photographer, or as a, you know, who knows what else. I'm sure surgeons could maybe use the Apple Vision Pro in some way. Oh God. Can you imagine your surgeon rolling up and they're like, okay, we're about to cut you open. Then the last thing you see before you fall asleep is them throwing on their Vision Pro.
Just, no, but
I'm
chefs,
good.
I'll keep whatever's in the kitchen, inside right?
me. Like there might be a really specific way to use this tool as a chef that could be really appealing and interesting, that as a photographer, you don't care at all about. Like that's where you really need to put your focus and energy on finding, instead of trying to create. It does take a $250,000 machine that can make perspectives and angles that nobody else can to have super broad appeal. When like your only differentiator is a stylistic approach, it does take that kind of thing, I think, in order to do it.
I'm curious about. I want to talk a little bit more about that, because I'm like stuck in this idea of niches at the moment, right? Like Glass was always going to be a niche network, right? Like we chose an audience very purposefully, and we built a product for that audience. in a idealistic form, right? You know, because like what photographers say they want is they want a replacement for Instagram, right? They want the views and they want the eyeballs and they want the likes and they want the business that existed on Instagram from like 2012 to 2015,
Yep.
right? Like that's the internet that the majority of professional people want to return, where it's like an easy, understandable thing where you don't have to pay a shit whack of money to $1 billion
Yep.
or $1 trillion corporation to get the reach that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like we're all trying a bunch of other stuff and like throwing stuff at the wall, hoping it sticks, right? You know, every photographer is like reinvesting in video this year because YouTube is the least destructive of the algorithms, right? Like there's the terrible thing where like people are like, when you say algorithm, what you mean is audience, and that's just your audience, and your audience isn't clicking on it. It's like, oh, shut up. Like, you know, that's clearly not what it actually is. And like the algorithm does impact your thing, because if that was true, right? Like this was a thing that Mosseri was talking about like 2 weeks ago. I think he had one of his like video interviews, AMAs, where he's like, well, we have too many people creating content and not enough people consuming content, which is why we have to restrict the views, right? Like, well, that's why we have to restrict your audience, because there's too much stuff being made. We don't have enough people consuming the thing. And it's like, okay, well, but we misaligned the objectives here, right? And the purpose of why we would want something.
I hate that it makes sense logically to hear something like that and be like, oh, okay, I see why you're doing this and charging money, blah, blah, blah. But another way that we could solve this issue is to have the person with the account be more empowered to control things. So one thing that I've always wanted, simple feature, they're never going to release. And I would be curious if you have guesses why. I have many, and whatever. It's
hit me.
If I could have people auto unfollow me on Instagram that haven't seen my or interacted with my content in X amount of time, I'm going to say over 2 years, just have them unfollow me. Obviously, that'll probably half or more the number of followers that I have, but at least that number is really high quality. Like the number of people that are following me that I see and that I'm engaged with and can be excited about, at least it's really relevant, instead of the disheartening effect of having a ton of numbers and only like 1% of them actually see the thing, right? Like that would be also a way to start tightening up these feeds, that you don't need an algorithm to curate for you. Like create tools for people to really collapse the number of followers they have. That would solve a huge amount of these issues that they're obviously never going to do, because that would mess up their data and how people are interconnected or not. And anyway, that's just the way that it is.
So like one of my favorite cartoonists on the internet is this really grim dude. His name is Jake Likes Onions. That's the name of his webcomic.
That's a great name.
He's a very grim little man that makes grim little weird, all millennial comics are like this weird nonsense that doesn't make sense to anyone except for people who like grew up during financial crises.
No, I just want the code for the bathroom. Somebody holding up a bank teller. That's great.
Yeah, so there are just like so many little things. I thought Jake stopped posting, but there he is. So the thing you're talking about kind of exists if you use Instagram correctly, right? So if you go to your own profile and you tap on following, it breaks your categories on your following section of Instagram to least interacted with, most shown in feed, hashtag creators and businesses. So if you tap into least interacted with, right? Like my number one least interacted with account is Zendaya. I do not interact with Zendaya's content very much. Well, that's because she's, like one of the most beautiful people on the planet, and there's not a lot for me to do, right? I scroll by, I go, great, I have a crush on you and your boyfriend. Thank you for existing. I love your work. Goodbye, right? Like, but Jake Likes Onions, one of my favorite webcomics in the world, that I literally thought he was done making comics. No, he's still making them. They're here. They're right here. I just haven't seen them. Hello, it is me. I am part of the problem. So now I literally am right now realizing that I have like 3 years of comics to scroll through later tonight. So that's very exciting for me.
That is.
But you know, so you can unfollow people that way, but it's also false because this is just my tattoo artist, the guy who has tattooed my entire left arm, part of my chest, and a few places on my right arm is in here. Like I love his art so much that I paid $10,000 to put it all over my body. And he's in here like, what's going on? Right. Like this is insane that there's so much little things that like trigger the algorithm to be like, no, we're not going to show you that anymore. Where it's like, oh, why? Right. Like, did I scroll by this once on accident without liking it and now it's gone? You see that a lot with Threads now, right? Because like Threads is a outrageously broken just shit show of an algorithm where like if you like a single thing, it's just that forever.
It's
right.
Odd.
Like
I totally agree. Even if like I'll like something that had a pretty large amount of interaction, from somebody random, and then it will show me everything they ever post, even if it's like one or two type of like, and I'm like, what is happening? Yeah, the algorithm is, like you said, I think quite broken.
Or if you accidentally like pause on something, like you set your phone down, but you don't turn off your screen and it's open, it'll be like, oh, you're reading that post for a really long time.
Yeah.
Right. Like Instagram thinks that Taylor Swift is like Glass's favorite thing in the world. And I don't know what to do. I keep hiding and muting every time I see it. Like yeah, sure, Taylor's fine or whatever. I mean, she's not, but let's not get into it. And so, it's like, okay, I don't actually need to keep seeing jokes about Taylor Swift and her boyfriend on this professional business account. But there's no way to fix. I don't know. I don't know what the solution here is, right? Like the niches that exist, and it's like, how do you, as a creator, how do you get around this, right? Like, how do you work in this ecosystem that's like clearly broken and clearly at its like end, right? Of like,
well, one thing, at least as it relates to my industry and what I do, is to continue with the tried and true engine of your business, my business, which is blogging.
Do things you own.
Those things that have suffered immensely, but were really, you own your website and your blog and the traffic that comes to it, and like the daily, or not daily, probably weekly, monthly habit of some people occasionally coming back to your site or finding you through Google search and other things like that. Is huge. I really think blogging isn't, people say it's dead because they can't like monetize it in a way that they used to be able to with ads and sponsored posts and stuff. I mean, some people probably can, but it used to be a lot easier. But it's still a super relevant type of thing. And same with newsletters. I mean, there in the past 4 or 5 years, especially, been a lot of successful newsletter based businesses that have, become very successful, even though they're essentially just leveraging email as your feed instead of a social media app. And it still works because people have control over that in a way that they just really don't over the, black box of social algorithms. Again, like kind of being consistent in a way that if you are given ownership of your audience, if Instagram gave you all the emails of all the usernames people that followed you, that would totally change the game.
Can you imagine?
They're never going to do. Yeah, right. That'd be awesome.
What
I think there was like a few months there that they did enable something like that, and everyone was like, "Oh my god!" And they quickly shut that down because they realized that would essentially allow transfer of the social graph anyone had built for themselves to another platform like email, newsletters, or blog interaction, stuff like that, which devalues Facebook's Meta's whatever thing.
Right.
So. Yeah, at the end of the day, you really need to be, I don't know what the right word is. It's not truthful, it's not candid, but just aware of the fact that when it looks like something isn't worth doing anymore, why does it look like that? And is that actually the case? Like so many people look at their blog stats and just, they're like, man, this is awful. But it's like the quality of the viewers, like going back to what you mentioned about going viral, right? If you have 1,000 people look at a blog post, on average, and then you get 100,000 people randomly, what is the quality of that extra 99,000 people? It's probably very, very low. You're absolutely going to get an uptick in quality people, but it's going to be a very small percentage of that traffic that, for whatever reason you went viral, discovered your blog. And all it is about that consistent audience that keeps coming back. Again, it's sort of the fundamental mindset that the Glass was built on. It seems like that. Again, the metrics are going to lie to you in a way that it just doesn't look like it should. in your brain.
Yeah.
Compared to how everything's represented, through the skew of a social media algorithm.
One of the things that's really interesting is that like the stuff that matters takes years, right? Not moments. And like everything is built for momentary consumption and like quick, empty calorie content bullshit versus like stuff that takes years is the harder stuff to measure, but it's also way more impactful.
And
like
also
I'm currently sitting in Marcus Naviati. I said that correctly. He said, shout out to Marcus for explaining that his last name for English people could be Naughty Jarvie. That's how the pronunciation, but the Naughty Avi, that little accent is how I have to use it to say it correctly. Like I'm sitting in his guest room right now in the middle of nowhere, Sweden, and we're going to go in the middle of nowhere, Sweden and Norway over the next week to take some really great photos and make some videos together and like do some exciting stuff. But like that only happens because we put in the last 2.5 years into our friendship and into our work and like into bouncing ideas off of each other and like building a relationship, right? Like the stuff that ends up mattering in a long-term thing are measured in months and years and not now.
Yeah.
And so it's like the same thing is true for website, right? Like or an app or a business. Like our email list for Glass is like hands down the most important thing we have for our marketing channel. It's, it's 5 digits worth of people who care enough about Glass to like read an email that I send every week. And that's nuts. And, like I know I've talked about this on the podcast before that like we had to do monthly really well before we transitioned to weekly. But like whenever someone's like, what should I do? It's like, oh, you should start an email. And they're like, well, I don't like emails. I don't read emails. I don't care. Like
I know.
I do not care about the reasons why you don't do it because like there are legitimate reasons not to do anything. But like owning your channel, the main channel that you're driving to people is so much more important, right? Like I think about our poor friend Ryan. Like I think about Ryan Muirhead all the time with his 155,000 Instagram subscribers and his 12 likes per post, right? Like that's wrong. But like if he had spent those 10 years focusing on getting an email list of 20,000 people who loved his art that he could just send a new print sale, it's like I am so sad for him and everyone, right? Because that's just the example that we use because we know him.
100%. And the unfortunate thing is it felt very much like an email list when organic reach was still a thing. Like it seemed counterintuitive that some company would actively do things to make you want to post on their site less, which having organic reach throttled kind of does. It makes you frustrated and annoyed and sad when work you think is your best ever. Because in general, the more you shoot, the better you get. So years later, Brian's work or anybody who's been shooting a long time should be better than it ever has been, but it's getting the least amount of interaction that it ever has been. So it's just the cycle of disheartening whatever. But in the beginning, it felt like a mailing list. You're right. It's really disheartening. Yeah, but I don't remember what there was something you said in there that really shook my brain in a way, and now I can't remember it.
Apparently not very hard.
No, it was good. It was really good. No, it's gone.
You're going to listen back to it when you're editing this and be like, oh shit, there it was. That was good.
I might just pause right here and add a voiceover of what I was thinking. We'll see.
Hey, this is Future Sam coming to you live from this exact same spot. The thing he said, and there's just like a 5-minute clip of you talking. I love that. Let's do it. Yeah. This new haircut I got is drooping into my face. I need pomade for this haircut, which is terrible. I don't use pomade.
I don't like new haircuts. The hair goes in ways that
I could put on a hat
to maintain. Yeah, it's a nice haircut. I'm gonna join you at some point. Cut off most of this mess. Can't
define most of the mess.
Like
how short are we going? Like
just to the point where I can barely put it up in a ponytail type thing.
Okay, so that's not. That's a trim. That's getting rid of split ends, buddy. That's not
a lot more than this. At least I don't know 4 inches because I caught in my straps.
You reposted an old video recently of you with short hair, and I was like, there he is. There's that guy. There he is. I'm unapologetically all about short hair Sam.
Okay.
It's just what I like. It's just who I am.
In both directions, so we'll see what happens. But thank you. I I have anxiety about the process now because I know it's going to be such a shift, and I never like my hair anyway after it's cut. So it's going to be.
Oh no. Well, I've got a great guy who will cut it a little too short for you in Sweden. You just got to hop on 3 flights and.
Got it. Is that how many flights it takes to get from Baltimore?
Yeah, but only because there was a significantly more expensive flight that got me here in 2 flights, but that wasn't worth it to me. I didn't want to go to DC or New York to get the direct flight to Stockholm.
I'm with you.
Fair. And so I did the Iceland Air, Baltimore to Iceland to Stockholm to, I don't know how to pronounce the name of where I am. He's told me like 12 times. I just keep forgetting. I'm only here for another couple of days, but then he and I are going on a road trip through Norway and Sweden in a couple of days. And then, so I get back to America in a week. I'm here for another week, but we're only staying here for another 2 days.
I remembered what I was going to talk about. It was related to you mentioning the shortening of attention spans and all that kind of stuff that goes into it. And I was so frustrated this morning. I recorded this, 10-minute video and edited it down to about 3 minutes to keep it to what I thought was like a succinct, well thought out, interesting insight into some of the data that I have been diving into with the recent state of the wedding photography industry survey.
Was it 3 minutes long?
It was like 3 minutes long.
It's like 3 minutes.
And I posted it on Reels, blah, blah, blah. And it truncated it down to 1.5 minutes because I had forgotten and just didn't care to check that there was a limit now to how long you can post a reel. It's 90 seconds. And it was so frustrating to have to cut what didn't feel like fluff. This was not filler stuff in the video that could have been tightened up, right? This was really relevant and provided a lot of color and context to what the main point was. And I had to get rid of a lot of it just to get the video down to half the length so that it wouldn't be truncated being posted as a reel. And it's just like, what is this? I have no control anymore. I really loved IGTV when it launched because it would let you do up to 60-minute videos. I know. But it would let you
remember when they put it in the corner where the notification was so they could juice their active numbers?
Then they did that with the shopping button as well at some point. They suck. Anyway, the overall issue is just that people don't have enough control. And I understand there's a lot of people on a platform and you need to make it a good experience so that people that are there just consuming things and want to pass the time aren't overwhelmed with crap that isn't relevant. But it's
if only there was a way that they could choose, if they could select who they see and what they don't see.
Crazy, right?
I think that would be a really interesting way to run a network
that you have to long press on the logo in order to see who you're actually following.
Following. Yeah. If you could follow people on Instagram, I think that would make it a really good product.
And they just hide it as an ability to toggle, and then you can't, and then it's never the default. It always goes back.
And then it also doesn't really work that well, and you're still missing things. And then, whatever. It's fine.
I'm excited to see your photos on Glass. I just posted a photo on Glass.
I'm
trying to keep up the tradition of posting on Glass whenever we record.
If you tap through to my profile and scroll back, let's see, 2 photos, 2 photos. If you go to the 3rd photo that's currently on my profile, you'll see a really good photo
from your recent trip.
You're gonna be like, "Damn, that's a good photo." And I'll be like, "Yeah, I know. I got a really good photo."
Ooh, that is a good photo. A little airplane or train? What is it? It's an airplane.
Airplane.
Do you know that person? That's not a prism, is it?
No, just really lucked out with the 3 screens on the seat backs, reflecting just right.
I see your comments now because the threaded comments on Glass are so freaking beautiful and easy to scroll through. Look at all this engagement.
Oh my God, look at all that engagement. People just talking. I took one of the best photos that I've taken in a long time, and then I posted it, and then people saw it because they
You know, if
follow
you guys
me,
could
and then
sort
we
the comments so
chatted.
that the best ones are at the top first, that would be really helpful. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Yeah, I can't do that. Stefan won't build that. Even if I wanted it, Stefan would be like, no, that's too much work. I'm
Yeah,
not doing
it's
that.
also arguably not helpful because so many really high value comments on threaded systems like that come later, like days later or whatever, just never get seen. And it's like, but
Yeah.
this is still high value. Oh well.
Oh
Yeah.
well.
But
Uh,
wonderful photo. I liked it. Did you edit that in Lightroom Classic? What do you edit in these
I
days?
do. I'm a Lightroom classic guy through and through. I have tried multiple times over the last year to get into Capture One. Sorry to
Same.
Rafi, friend of the show. It's just like, and I don't think I actually don't think it's Capture One's fault. I think it's my fault. Like, there's this barrier of uncomfortable that I'm not willing to work through.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because like what's the way to describe this? When I switched from my Q2 to the GFX, that made me very uncomfortable. I did not take a photo that felt like mine for like the first 3 or 4 weeks of shooting with the GFX. It just felt off,
Mm-hmm.
even though like objectively they were amazing photos, like amazing quality. And I was like really excited about editing them, and I was really excited about it. They didn't feel like mine, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it felt like I was cosplaying as someone else, but I knew that
Interesting.
payoff was going to be worth it because of the leap forward in the quality of my images. But for editing, I don't know how to I don't know how to quantify that, right? Like if I start using Lightroom, even just Lightroom, regular Lightroom CC, whatever the hell,
I
whatever
know
it's
exactly
called.
what you mean. It's a very similar problem to what people go through with everything creatively. I honestly think like switching the fundamental like tool that you have a lot of times it's this uncomfortable transition that arguably your work maybe does get worse than it was before until you figure out, oh yeah, this is where the button is. You work that muscle memory, you dial in the
Yeah.
settings, and boom, something is unlocked, and now it's elevated. But you have this period of awkward growth, and you don't ever really know for sure if it's going to be worth that investment and just getting through that growth period until you're on the other side of it. But the problem, like you're alluding to, is with editing when it's an editing platform. Even if I think Capture One could look the exact same as the Lightroom Classic interface, like the GUI style, it still might be a disconnect because they use a different set of like algorithms or whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
filters, whatever,
Tools.
to render the actual color interpretation and the sharpness and everything else that like actually renders your photos is just fundamentally different. A lot of people prefer it in Capture One and say that they like it, and you know that might be great and true for them, but for many people, especially like me, I'm in the same bucket. Like I have spent so many years getting familiar with exactly what like the highlight slider does relative to the shadow and how it manipulates these things that it is a fundamental, like deep part of the core look of my work that starting over from scratch in Capture One is just an uphill battle. And I wonder, when and if Adobe ever switches to Lightroom non-classic as the default. I think the rendering engine is the exact same, but right now it is. But I wonder if they ever, kill off classic, if they'll make a switch to how images are literally rendered in Lightroom, and how that's going to impact people's
Heart palpitation. I hear it, right? Like I a couple of months ago or a couple of weeks ago, I don't know when it was, I made the joke of like, if you use Lightroom mobile for your full editing, send me an email. And like someone did, right? Like every time that happens, a couple of people do email me and we're like, yeah, I use it. What do you want to know? It's like, I don't actually want to, I don't know. I don't have questions. I just like, I'm using that expression because like, how, right? Because like
Yeah,
how, what happened when, because the Lightroom CC was a worse product for years.
mhm.
And so like, even if they have full parity now, it's still now in a way that I don't understand, right? Like it works in a way that I don't understand in the same way that Capture One does, right? Like there are tools in Capture One that are so much better, light years better than Lightroom, right? Like if you ever shoot tethered, right? Like you do not fuck with Lightroom because it's trash compared to Capture One. Like if you add grain in Capture One is so much nicer, so much more natural looking, so much, and like it's amazing. I don't add grain to my photos. Right. Yeah. And so like if I did, that's like a 5 or 10% bump in a photo that I would be like, okay, this might be worth it. This, if I shot in a studio like I used to when I used Capture One, I used Capture One at the studio I helped run in way back in the day in 2009 to 2011. And so it's like we use Capture One all the time because it was cheaper than Lightroom. We didn't have the money to afford Adobe Creative Suite because back then it was $2,500 for the whole thing as opposed to 22 or 21
People
or whatever it was.
Forget how expensive that stuff used to be. Multi-thousands of dollars.
Yeah, as opposed right, like subscriptions are a huge pain in the ass, but like your stuff keeps getting better. They keep shipping new things.
Like it depends on the company, but if you're subscribed to Insight and like Adobe and other products, like they are getting better. And the problem is like the distortion of the App Store when every single app on the App Store used to be free or 99 cents at the most. And that really created this like anchoring of what the value of what software should cost in a way that was never going to be sustainable. And, we're just, the chickens are coming home to roost or whatever the phrase is.
It's like that problem is like absolutely crippling to Glass's business, right? Yeah. Like the uphill battle to get someone to be like, oh no, it costs $40. Like, ooh,
I literally spent that on Taco Bell the other day. Like, geez, people, like, God.
Right. And so like the
soda, can I just say right now, like soda, a bottle of Coke is $4 at Firehouse Subs, $4 for a Coke bottle. Okay. Sorry.
I love that you have gone to Taco Bell and Firehouse Subs in the last like 2 days. Yeah. That that. I love that. Yeah. Taco Bell costs 50% more than my local taqueria, right? Because like I live right by that taqueria. A burrito at my taqueria is $8.99 and Taco Bell is $14 now for me.
I want to pivot to two things that are completely unrelated, but just to wrap up, I want to get your feedback on.
No. Because I have I have a YouTube video that I'm about to make. I'm very excited about it. This is a little preview because I finally figured out like a way to describe glass that makes sense to me because people use it's a cup of coffee a month. Just get over it. And I hate that.
Yeah.
Never say that because you're not talking about a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee is a ritual. It's a thing that matters. It's a time in your day. It's a special little thing. Marcus took me to one of his favorite coffee shops today and I had a cortado and it was delicious.
Love it.
It was so good. It was a perfectly roasted bean. It was very well pulled. That's what you call when you make an espresso shot. You're pulling espresso shots. It was like the guy was so good. He's clearly been roasting and making coffee forever. And it was just like a really great cortado. And he and I had a nice little walk to the thing. We took some photos along the way. We had our cortado and, like it was a nice little afternoon activity with us. And like, I don't want you to give that up. The thing that we built Glass for is for the place for you to put your photos that you took while you're walking to go get your little coffee.
Yeah.
Right. Like it is an investment in your hobby and the thing you care about in the same way that a coffee is more than just a coffee. It's a spot to like share your love for photography. And so I'm like really excited to like take a photo walk to go get a coffee in Baltimore. I'm going to like walk to my favorite coffee shop and get a coffee and then make a little video. And I get to like say this exact same thing. So when you watch this or listen to this next week, and then in 2 weeks, when that's the YouTube video, spoilers, sorry, I ruined it. But right. Like I'm really excited about that like distinction because it's important. It's not just a cup of coffee. And I hate it when people minimize the thing that you care about down to just, it's just this. No, it's not. It's a whole experience. There's like that really great Kurt Vonnegut quote about I'm going to go buy an envelope today. And my wife asked me, you can buy those on the internet for 100, 100 in a box. And like, I pretend not to hear her because I'm going to see beautiful people. I'm going to meet a dog. I'm going to write like all the wonderful things while I go out to try to get a single envelope. It's that same sort of thing, right? Like all the things that you do when you get out of your house to go get a coffee and like exist and live and have a nice time. It's like, that's important. And like, that's where, that's where like the magic of a
10 times
life is.
If you wear your Apple Vision Pro the entire time, you'll have all of that plus more.
Anyway, this has been Endless Appreciation. Thanks for being here. And
number one, did you see the Taco Bell Apple style keynote where they unveiled their new branding for a lot of, I'm going to just say that was amazing. And I'm happy to spend as much money as I do at Taco Bell because clearly they are on to something. It was amazing.
Truly thrilled. We have Baja Blast cake coming. We've got Salt and Straw Choco Tacos coming. Shout out to Salt and Straw, Portland original. I've got a weird personal beef with Salt and Straw that I can't get on the internet, and I love that, right? Like I love that my beef is now extending to my favorite national-wide food chain. This is a rich inner life that I get to live now every time I go to Taco Bell. I'm on like, do I want to eat the best ice cream made by someone I don't like? Right? Like that's magic. That's the good stuff. There's a Baja Blast gelato that's coming out later this year.
I heard. Yeah, they're making some interesting changes. I'm excited. But aside from that, if anybody hasn't watched it, you should go just search like Taco Bell Apple style keynote or something on YouTube.
Yeah, just Taco Bell keynote.
It's like an hour and a half stream from Taco Bell people on a stage announcing new products.
It's truly amazing. I would love to do that for Glass, right? Except
I just want to know who was in the audience. I'm assuming it was Taco Bell employees, but like who was there? They're laughing.
No, it was food bloggers and stuff.
Food bloggers.
They flew in food bloggers and food influencers and a bunch of YouTubers and stuff.
The other thing I want to bring up, and we don't have to get too much into this because we're already at an hour, but OpenAI's demo.
Terrifying, horrible video thing that was released today or yesterday. Yeah, we're screwed. Planet's over.
Here's the thing. Here's why I'm optimistic about Sora, which is video from text generation that looks shockingly realistic. And I'm sure the examples they showed are cherry
or terrible, but just truly awful.
But here's the thing. I think I brought this up before in a conversation with you. If not, remind me. But I think all of these completely realistic AI renders of things that don't actually exist, photos and video and audio, are going to just bring us back to a time when the default assumption was that what you're seeing on the internet should not be trusted. Do you believe what you're seeing? You probably shouldn't because you saw it on the internet. Like, I'm not exactly even sure when that baseline assumption flipped and everybody just kind of assumed what they saw on the internet was the truth. And we have talked about this because I remember it was around the time when like news started to participate, news organizations, legitimate places started to participate in social media. People thought, if it's from the news and it's on social media, there must be a strong degree of truth to it. I can believe what I see on the internet now. And that at some point just became the default assumption. And I don't know why, because it's never been further from the truth that what you see and read on the internet should be trusted, even from what I think most people come to accept now, even from very established like legacy news organizations. A lot of times they get it wrong because they're just being so quick to weigh in on something that the information isn't necessarily accurate and gets updated later in a way that nobody ever pays attention to, right? So once it becomes very obvious that anybody can make anything from anything with just words, and it looks completely photorealistic, I'm hoping that it creates a bit more of a critical baseline assumption that, oh, this is probably not true. Let me investigate before I reshare this or repost it. Now, even if, I know, you're right. People probably...
No, what makes you think that is going to happen?
That people just won't believe it because they will think anything that's that eye-catching or that attention-grabbing, oh, that's probably AI. Like, I can't trust that. Right now, people don't think that. They still, at first glance, think that it's real. That's why a lot of AI photographers still get like tens of thousands of likes and engagement on their stuff. But I think that shifts over time. And I think people will start to believe and research, like in the comments, is this AI or is this real before I like it? It's going to take time, but I think the more these tools...
But that's not going to happen.
You don't
That's
think
not
so? Okay.
that's not going to happen at all.
I think
People are going to fall for misinformation at an alarming rate, and the integrity of literally everything is going to collapse, and society will
that in
fail.
itself is what is going to create an environment of.
You have to survive that, though.
I know that's true. I agree,
and that's
going to be a rocky
slim
transition. But I think long term, if we survive it, it could be okay. Yeah, imagine like 10 years from now when everything you see, you're like, this is probably fake, and then it turns out to be fake, or this is probably fake, and occasionally it's real. But the default assumption and what you're seeing, you have years of just being let down because this is AI, not real. You're going to stop going to that resource, being YouTube or Instagram or wherever your AI stuff is proliferating. You're going to stop using that as a resource, and you're going to lean more into things you know without a doubt are real, like in-person conversations or email newsletters.
Right, but people don't want real or false. They want confirmation bias. They want what they think and believe to be real, so they will believe the fake thing, which is why we have...
And there's always going to be
for a while. Have you heard of anti-vaxxers?
That's true.
Right? Like,
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah. Now I'm not saying it's going to completely dissolve. Like, there's going to be people like that, but I think it's going to become a more segmented, smaller part of the existence on the world for people.
Okay, but measles is back. We brought measles back voluntarily.
I'm not saying there aren't going to be awful consequences, but I can see a world where I need to get you on the optimists subreddit. There's a whole subreddit.
I'm trying as hard as I can here. This is like the most optimist and happy and cheerful I've ever been. I know. Yeah, there are people in your network who only listen to this because they're fans of you, who are like, man, Daniel is mean and like rude and so grim. And I'm like, listen, I know you feel that way. I also sometimes feel that way, but I promise you, this is the nicest and happiest I've been in my entire life.
All right, I'm going to make you join Optimists Unite, and it's going to be awesome because
I love you so much. You are so good for me, Sam. This is important. But no, it's bad. It's bad. It's a terrible thing. I hope that OpenAI is regulated out of existence.
More spectacular in Lightroom. Cool. Great ad. Sorry. All right. Well,
anyway,
enjoy.
Shout out to the grim.
Shout out to the optimists. Optimists Unite.
We're all doing great.
Subreddit. There's only 6,000 of us there. It's a wonderful place. Get in there.
But I don't use Reddit. Because of
I'll just forward you Reddit links then. I know you.
All right, yeah. Send me your happy links every once in a while. That'd be great.
A love letter.
Well, Sam, this has been wonderful.
And pessimistic thoughts. I see you.
Yeah. Thank you for liking and subscribing to Endless Pessimism. I'm your host, Daniel A.G., and we have our counter host here, Endless Optimism, Sam Hurd. Please, I'm just
okay.
This is great.
No, that was great.
All right. Well, I'll see you. See you next week. Appreciate you, buddy.
Appreciate you. That's good.